Greetings, everyone. In this video, I'm going to share with you the results of some research studies that are great news for ESL students and ESL conversation teachers. One of the greatest thrills for an ESL teacher in a conversation skills class is seeing students in pairs or small groups all actively engaged in conversations. There's often a lot of energy flow and even sometimes some laughing. However, some teachers avoid pair or small group work in ESL conversation classes because of some assumptions they hold. But research shows those assumptions often don't hold up. In this video, I'll walk through 4 common myths about ESL conversation classes and show what the research really says. The first assumption is that students will make mistakes when they are in pairs or small groups, and they will learn incorrect English from each other. For example, let's say Kehe and Tara are talking, and Kehe says, "I didn't call you last night because I broke my cell phone." And Tara tries to correct him, saying, "I think you mean you broken your phone." So then Kehe says, "You're right. I didn't call you because I broken my phone." So the assumption is that the teacher needs to be monitoring every pair in case they make mistakes like this. However, this is what researchers have found. In one study, they observed adult ESL students for 10 hours, and only once did a student change a correct sentence to an incorrect one as a result of being miscorrected by a fellow student. In another study, the subjects miscorrected only 0.3% of their partner's errors. The researchers concluded that miscorrections are not a serious problem. Students are not learning incorrect English from each other when they are working in pairs or small groups without a teacher closely monitoring them. The second myth is ESL students will speak more if their partners are native English speakers or their teacher rather than ESL classmates. Actually, the reverse is true. A study counted the total words produced by participants during pair activities. Some pairs had 2 ESL students, and other pairs had an ESL student and a native English speaker. They found that the 2 ESL speakers talked significantly more to each other than they did with a native speaker. The researchers concluded, clearly, if production practice is viewed as essential to acquisition, learners will benefit by practicing with each other rather than with native speakers. Myth number 3, ESL students will more carefully monitor their speech when interacting with native English speakers. According to research, there were no significant differences in the number of grammatical and lexical errors that students made when ESL students spoke to a native speaker compared to when 2 ESL students spoke to each other. In sum, having a native speaker rather than another student as a conversation partner does not seem to ensure that students will speak more grammatically correct English. Myth number 4, native English speakers or teachers will correct their ESL conversation partner's grammatical mistakes. If we match up an ESL student with a native speaker, there is an assumption that ESL students will ask a native-speaking partner to help them, and that the native-speaking partner will correct the student's mistakes. 2 interesting studies were conducted to see if this actually happens. In one study, in which ESL students had conversations with their native-speaking friends, the students made 1,595 errors, of which only 7% were corrected by the native speaker. In another study, researchers studied 4.5 hours of conversations between students and native speakers. The students only asked for help 28 times. Interestingly, when students had conversation with other students, other ESL students, they asked for help 21 times over the 4.5 hour period, compared to 28 times with the native speakers. In other words, students rarely asked for help, whether their partners were native speakers or other students. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, all this research is great news for students and teachers. When teachers in conversation classes put their students in pairs or small groups, both the students and teachers can feel confident that this is the best way for them to develop their conversation skills. Neither the students nor the teacher need to worry if it would be better to have the teacher or a native English-speaking assistant more directly involved in the pair or group work. That takes tremendous amount of pressure off the teacher and lets students have the student-friendly benefits of working with classmates. In the near future, I plan videos about ways to make conversation classes more effective and what the teacher's role should be while students are working in pairs or small groups. Thank you for watching.